Right, okay. Well, gentlemen, it's time to engage ourselves in a spot of treason. So,
Turn the cameras off, Samson. Mute the mics quickly.
so I can only apologise profusely if by Sunday all three of us are locked up in the Tower of London like the good old days. However, I shall be tactful and try and manoeuvre this well enough. However, before I do, I shall point out that you can still buy the third issue of Islander magazine. I've had a look at it. I've just got my own copy now from the office, and Rory has really outdone himself this time. Fantastic neo-medievalist.
That's my one.
You know, aesthetics. It's fantastic. Yep, Connor's written an article for it. I've done my third article on my Marshals of Middle Earth
Islander
series.
issue 3 is
And the most
cameo Cole.
and the best thing about this is it's a physical asset. And so if you can buy this for £14.99, it's going to have an appreciating return. And one day your grandchild will look at you and say, "Grandfather, what are those?" And you'll point to your amazing collection of Islander magazines that are now worth thousands and thousands of pounds. And you'll say, "You were there. You had the foresight to go and buy Islander issue 3. So go do it."
I think you've got you beat on advertising, Harry. You need to up your game.
No, that's all right.
Well, last time I just
low energy in my segment.
Last
I'm
time I
sorry.
just morally shamed them, so I thought I need to try a
Listen,
different
I
approach.
go with the financial incentive. I call them poor. You go with the moral incentive. You call them sinners.
Yeah.
If you don't buy Islander, Luca will follow you around and throw excrement at you in the street. Continue.
With gloves on. Right, okay, so yes, we're going to talk a little bit about the royal family, and particularly I don't just want to focus on Charles, because even though Charles has been in the news a lot recently because, you know, of his, obviously all of the stuff that you covered in the previous segment about the Iftar and Ramadan in Windsor Castle, I'd like to explore the Windsors more broadly and their legacy over how they've impacted Britain.
Oh, well,
since
we're living in their legacy, aren't we?
we are living
Surely.
in their legacy, and this is what I want to examine. So if we could just play... do I just click...
No. It's going to have to be the...
Oh, sure.
mouse.
No need for the volume, just something we can play in the background. But I do think that, in particular, you know, with the Queen's funeral, that was a really important moment, actually, in British history. And I actually have a lot of positive things to say about it. Because when you look at the ceremony here and for the funeral, the magic of England just comes back to life. You know, all of a sudden, the pageantry, the discipline, the show. This is one of those things that one time a day, you know, we were admired the world over for. And I feel like on some level, partly because of the longevity of the Queen's reign, in a large part, in fact, I feel like when she did die, whether people liked her or loved or didn't like her, they felt that something had changed, something was missing, something had been lost. There was sort of we'd lost an anchor to old Britain in some way there. And I do actually think that on a personal level, she seems like she was a very charming, very warm, very conscious, you know, person who tried to do what she thought was good. However, I do think there needs to be now, a few years out, a reassessment of her and her legacy and the wider legacy of the Windsors. So if I could, do I just click?
It's all right.
Oh, thanks. If we could go over to the next... oh, yes.
It's okay.
Yeah. If you tell me which... Oh,
That's right.
Fine, thank you. So, one thing I did just want to comment on here was actually... It sounds a bit silly, but The Crown by Netflix. Because actually, even though it's obviously basically historical fiction, none of the conversations actually happened. It's not real history. It's a fictional history.
You're telling me they were actors?
However, did you know? However, I did want to just comment on the fact that regardless of how true a depiction it was of real history, this had international viewing. This was viewed by millions and millions of people. And, you know, even when I was in Japan, right, a few years ago, I had Japanese people saying, "Oh, the Queen, we watched The Crown." Right, it was something that
booze.
Right, Tia booze, yeah. So there was something there that I suppose what I'm trying to say about this is that the British monarchy still holds a place of fascination throughout the world. There is something magical about monarchy in and of itself. When you're in the playground as a child, you want to be a king or a queen or a prince. No one says, "Oh, I'm pretending to be a senator," right? When's the last time a child ever said that in the school playground? No, there is a magic, there's a mythos to monarchy that is actually there's a deep magic to monarchy itself.
It's the Evolian concept of immanent transcendence, the idea that the king can at once be a tether to the earthly and the heavenly. He can embody the sort of transcendent values of the religion of his tribe, of his people, and give them a guiding star to what they should aspire to, while also being directly accountable, because he has that concern about lineage, to the people, to his kingdom. And also, it's more likely that he's going to be fashioned for statecraft if he's brought up in the shadow of his father, knowing the role that he's going to inherit, than the revolving door, well, increasingly less revolving door, of permanent politicians over in the States who are only interested in their own empowerment and enrichment.
I think also it's the most natural expression of the leadership principle. Everybody wants to feel as though they are the chosen leader, right? But you don't imagine yourself in a kind of heroic fashion becoming that chosen leader through simply charming enough people to get them to put your name on a ballot. You imagine capturing their love and adoration through heroic feats of bravery and strength, through overcoming challenges, not through going through some kind of bureaucratic principle, bureaucratic process. And so there's the romance to it as well, which is completely lost when bureaucracy and the liberal democratic systems that we live under are as unromantic as possible, on purpose, I would argue, to add as part of the disenchantment of the magic of life.
Of course. Now, one thing I also want to mention in terms of, because unlike, say, I'm not dunking on them, but say unlike monarchies in Scandinavia, right, our British monarchy also has a second responsibility, which is to the Commonwealth, right? The Commonwealth, the post-imperial group of nations that are supposed to be bound together with some sense of fealty and loyalty, and we respect the best interest of this voluntary association. However, that is all, on some level, there is something to be said for the fact that a lot of our post-colonial colonies don't have rageful vendettas against us all the time, like, say, the French ones do, like in Algeria. However, I really want, if we could go to the next link. Take, for example, first of all in Britain, how ethnic minority Britons are remembering Queen Elizabeth II. It says, over the course of Queen Elizabeth's reign, Britain's population grew by nearly a third, from roughly 50 million in 1950 to 67 million today. An increase spurred, at least in part, by increased immigration.
At least in part.
In part is doing a lot of, by that they mean basically all.
The birth rates were falling past the initial baby boom to lower than replacement levels, but it was only in part.
Yes, only in part.
Now we've got more deaths than births, an aging population, and an increase in population of 1% every year, driven solely by migration.
Yes. No, entirely dishonest. But as it says, as of last year, people born out... This article is from a few years ago, so I'll skip over that. But it says, while Queen Elizabeth's passing presented a rare moment of national unity for many Britons, for the country's ethnic minority communities, it also invited an opportunity of reflection and reckoning over the Queen's legacy, Britain's colonial history, and what the monarchy represents to them. Just 38% of non-white UK citizens wanted the country to remain a monarchy, according to a May poll, compared to 68% of all Britons surveyed.
Well, it's because it, by lineage, excludes them unless someone is married into the monarchy.
Yes.
So in electoral politics, you can gerrymander the demographics to then gerrymander democracy to then elect politicians which agitate on behalf of your sectarian concerns and manufacture consent to bring in more of your ethnic or religious in-group in. See Priti Patel. It's very, very hard for that to happen unless you ideologically capture the monarchy, which seems to be happening.
Well, yes.
For that same process to play out.
Exactly so, exactly so. And this comes to the wider point about Charles in particular, because you're appealing to people who fundamentally are not your natural constituents. They're not your natural supporters, and most of them would not be affected by the deep magic of England if the monarchy were to disappear tomorrow, right? And so this is a fundamental point. But if we could just go to the next one. This is something as well, because I wanted to pick on, because I talked about the Commonwealth and other countries, but the anglosphere, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, these are former colonies as well. These are our, former allies. It says the Queen's complicated relation with multiracial Australia. And this is one of the things that it talks about as well. Obviously, the demographic shifts that have been happening throughout white majority populations throughout the Commonwealth as well. And so if defending the Commonwealth means replacing Australians, the Anglo-Australians, in their own land that they've cultivated the harsh climate, they've settled, all of those things.
Made it prosperous.
And now, just others are coming in and reaping the benefits of that, but also
How
saying...
they managed to do it without diversity is
Right. And so now all of a sudden you've got that thing where, like after October 7th, Australians suddenly have to deal with radical Islamists in Sydney saying, kill all the Jews. Now, obviously, I don't think that's anything the Australians wanted to live amongst.
I don't think even the Australian Aborigines knew what a Jew was.
Right.
They'd never encountered them. So it's so not indigenous to Australia that the pre-Australian Aboriginals would have no concept of it.
I need to go back in time and view with my own eyes the first time a Jew and an Aboriginal ever encountered one another. I need to see that.
Just like this is so not native to Australia.
No,
it's
exactly.
so concentrated in the sliver of history. It's absurd.
Right.
Same with the suspected Islamist. We have to say suspected because I think he was under the age of 18, who ran up and stabbed the bishop, the Coptic Christian bishop. Like, that's completely alien to Australia. We've become anaesthetised to it over in Britain because of the growing Muslim population, but that never happened in Australia till the last couple of years.
It's happened remarkably fast. So if I could ask for the next one. So, look, on some level, it's one of those things where he seems like a very kind, doddering old man, right? Who, in any other time, you wouldn't have that much, it's like, oh, look at this wonderful architecture I've built in Poundbury and everything, and, oh, aren't these awful brutalist buildings terrible, and I'm a king
The times we live in do not call for a doddering old man.
Exactly, and this is my wider point. Also, if you just go to the next one, it's like, oh, right, you've built up that wonderful town, have you? Well, the model town of Poundbury has rats everywhere, and families are living plagued. So...
Also, look, Poundbury, fine, if you want to improve the architecture of British towns and cities, I'm with you.
Yes.
But it feels a little bit like an English nature reserve.
Mm.
Like, if you've been chased out of your cities, which it's not the cities, yeah, sure, city architecture is not that great for human flourishing, but it's not the cities themselves that create unlivable conditions. It's the people in the cities who bring a foreign culture that make the city resemble the third world country that they came from. If you chase all those people if you chase the ancestors of the people that built the city up and are suitable of maintaining it out of the cities and into these small enclaves, it just feels like you're trying to keep an endangered species alive.
What you're going to end up with is you're going to end up with a level of segregation like Orania in South Africa, where the English have their own little separate enclaves that are functioning so much better than all of the rest of the country, and they're just going to show straight back up on the front door, knocking, saying, let us in.
Yes.
Some sympathetic doddering fool is going to let them in. They're going to put their feet up on the table and say, Gibbs. Gibbs. And then the whole thing will collapse again.
Of course. But also, so really the wider point, though, is that Charles isn't the guy. He's not the guy, but also I don't want...
He's not capable of being the guy.
Courtesy of and most affected.
Yeah, but also it's one of those things that fundamentally we have to acknowledge...
Sorry, I
saw a sneaky Vance in the corner.
Sorry. Sorry, continue.
Oh, I just sorry. Yeah.
That's my favourite one.
Sorry. Please,
everywhere I look, I see him.
Drawing it back, I It's in my brain now. There's but fundamentally, we have to acknowledge the fact that the trajectory that Charles is on is not in any way a fundamental departure from that of the late Queen herself. When I remember Liz Truss giving the speech, after the news came of the Queen's passing, and Liz Truss said in her speech that the Queen was the rock on top of which modern Britain was built. And this is very, very true, but that modern Britain is a multicultural Britain. Elizabeth II and now Charles after represent bringing the Commonwealth to Britain so that Britain is the last holdout of the British Empire itself.
Being administrated by our former imperial.
Exactly this. And so fundamentally...
Oh, sorry, but the symbology then of the Queen having her last meeting with Liz then being cooed out by Rishi Sunak, that takes on an infinite transcendence of its own.
Mm. Yeah, the portents don't lie, people. If we could go to the next one, I just have favourite sourpuss Peter Hitchens here. This is a fantastic letter. His Majesty King Charles, so politically correct that he sometimes resembles a walking bottle of hand sanitizer, is said to have pressed for this emollient, dripping change of name from HMS Agincourt to HMS Achilles, and the Starmer government, always in the market for a national climb down, has agreed. So, look, on some level, this is just surface level culture war slop, right? Like, they changed the name of the ship. However, the reason I wanted to draw on it is because actually the fact that this was Charles's express wish. Sorry, isn't Henry V, who was the great warrior Agincourt, supposed to be your ancestor? Aren't you spitting on the achievements of your own personal ancestors here?
Hey, listen, is Charles the beneficiary of a great lineage of kings, or is he just another individual like you or me?
Mm.
I can't help but feel that that's the way that he's looking at things. He's absorbed the kind of liberal ideology in that way.
It does very much feel like the continued Blairite strip mining of everything that is distinct and excellent about Britain in order to unilaterally disarm the population against complaining about the changes that none of us want.
Mm. But also, it's like, we need to change the name HMS Agincourt because it might upset the French. It's like,
that's a British pastime.
It's one of our favourite pastimes. Like, I get jittery if I go 5 minutes without upsetting the French. I go through withdrawal symptoms. So we must continue. If I could ask...
I'm going to commit some treason here and say I do not mind the French.
I don't mind them. But it's what Eric Zamor said to Carl when we were walking through Whitechapel. He said, in times like these, we old enemies become the oldest of friends.
This is true. You're
facing a more existential threat.
Yes. And, I think of France like a little brother.
Yeah, very little.
A very annoying.
Diminutively little.
And, annoying, weedy, greasy little brother, but still a member of the family. Yeah. Still a member of the family.
Get into a bit of a scrap every now and again. Speaking of which, I hope this was like Charles refereeing of a bare-knuckle boxing match between these two. The imam versus the rabbi.
Israel-Palestine, duke it out.
Yeah. Right, but that's exactly
Face me one-on-one in honourable combat.
Broke a pool cue. Just...
But this is a problem, right? It seems that Charles seems to have to... multiculturalism and diversity is...
Ethan Klein's Palestinian cousin.
He's gone from Jewish to Greek to Palestinian.
Oh my god.
But it just seems remarkable to me that Charles can't go a single speech without talking about how brilliant diversity has been for Britain, yet he seems to have to spend a remarkable amount of his time trying to get the minorities to talk to one another to make sure that they don't harm one another.
Well, he did also praise Starmer's militant response to the largely peaceful protests following Southport. So he seems to rejoice in the cracking down on members of his own population who complain about this diversification.
Yes.
And, conditions in prison which lead to the deaths of men like Peter Lynch. So.
Yes. If we could have the next one. So this really rubbed me up the wrong way. When they were just packing sweets ready for Ramadan. I just want to make it
The
clear.
happiest I've seen him in ages as well.
Right, yeah, look at the glee. Look at the glee. Oh, yeah, isn't it great? But I just want to make the point, right, that when Edward the Eighth was the abdication crisis just before World War II, when he was told, no, you can't become the king because you can't have a wife who is a 3-time American divorcee. The problem with that, obviously, being that she was American. That was less egregious than this.
Well, of course, because
That was less egregious.
divorce is not a problem for the Anglicans.
Yes.
I'm just thinking Richard the Lionheart is looming over Charles's shoulder like a force ghost, shaking his head disapprovingly.
Absolutely. And so if we go to once more, yes, obviously you covered this in the previous segment. I do actually have, it says, guests who attended the event started with a self-guided tour of the state apartments before dining in the famed, St. George's Hall.
Is that in English or? It's a genuine question.
Yeah, well, one attendee told the BBC, I've never been to Windsor Castle before. That speaks for itself. This is an awesome experience. The first time to be here and to do it in an Islamic way.
It's possessed by jinns. Don't come back. It's just apoplectic beyond words.
Right. However, there's nothing to worry about, boys, because I can understand that this segment has been a bit stressful for you. You know, it's irritating to see our monarch so committed to his oldest, noblest subjects. Before there was empire...
They're the Ottomans.
Right. Genuinely, before there was empire, before any of that, before Elizabeth I, and there was just England, there was us. There was the ancient kingdoms of the British Isles, and, we were... And so to be spat on in this way, so disrespectfully, so callously, so abrasively, fundamentally, it shouldn't be able to stand. And I know this frustrates you, but fortunately, if we could have the next one, it's fine, because we're going to go die for Ukraine soon.
If it weren't for Trump tilting his head ever so slightly, like, this would be the preface to us dying in a ditch in Kyiv.
Yes.
Yeah. I appreciate all of Yarvin's writing, I really do, and I think he's correct about the mimetic power of monarchy, and I think that Trump is embodying that now. But the idea that any of Britain's royal family, maybe Will and Kate's kids, we'll see, are gonna ride to Britain's rescue, it's for the birds.
Well, this is what I was saying.
What he's talking about is more the executive use of power.
Yes.
He does keep humorously fantasizing about Charles proroguing Parliament and dismissing everyone.
Oh, Curtis, we all like a daydream every so often, but get off it.
But fortunately, what you were just saying actually about the next generation, because if you just go to the last one, it's my final one. William and Kate aren't coming to save us. This was an event at Waterloo Station that William and Kate attended, where they unveiled this Windrush monument.
It's not our bloody Mayflower. We existed before Windrush showed up.
Yes, but...
For over 1,000 years before Windrush.
Yes, but, so William and Kate will continue to perpetuate. Now, unless we're going to suggest that Prince George is going to be the Baron Trump of England, right, as some sort of Caesar figure who's
the youngest one? I forget.
William's son.
Yeah, the third one.
Oh, is it Louis?
It might be, the one that's covering his ears during everything.
Yeah.
It'll be him.
It'll be him. But just some final thoughts on all of this, which I did say to Harry before we went on, which is just that, look, in an ideal world, I would like the institution of monarchy to continue. I have more sentimental attachment to monarchism over republicanism. However, if it comes between the moral choice of which one is best served in order to save England and the integrity of these islands and the people on it, then I don't feel like we can have the luxury of choosing. However, having said that, I'm not going to get Cromwellian about it and suggest that we must become a republic because that's how we're going to save England. Because fundamentally, the fact is, the French are a republic, and they're dealing with the exact same problems that we're dealing with here. I don't think it's a symptom of the unique parochial constitutional settlement of a European country. It's the wider zeitgeist of what we're suffering through in the late 20th, early 21st century. However, I fundamentally believe that after everything that I've been through, that I've put today, that the House of Windsor itself does not deserve to continue because of what they've put us through, right? It should be, if we are to continue the monarchy, it needs to be a clean slate. We need to find, we can do a Hanoverian thing. We can find the 52nd closest in line, and we can get them over from Germany again if we have to.
As long as we don't do a William of Orange, because there are certain clauses in there that exclude Catholics. I'm not a fan.
We're not inviting the Dutch back over. Don't worry.
Well, honestly, this is what I was actually going to say at this point, that you might be saying, honestly, at this point, I don't even care if the monarchs are Catholic. You know, I don't care if we have to get the Jacobites back. You know, it's
Henry VIII was a great big mistake. I agree.
Right. It's just because fundamentally, I feel like...
Has anybody been tracing the lineage of the original Anglo-Saxon kings?
There is a guy, I think, living in Australia who's a Catholic who has a plausible claim to the throne before they split off.
Well, before the Normans.
No, before the split.
I want a descendant of a pre-Norman king. That'll get us back on track.
Well, honestly, I genuinely think that you could grab a random working class chap from Sheffield, make him king, and he'd have better intuitions than Charles.
There's probably a chip shop owner in Hastings that's like directly related to Harold Hardrada.
So we're just gonna get them out then?
Yeah, exactly.
Clear them out, get them out.
Simple as, signed away. Yeah. So, right, there we go. Those are my thoughts on the House of Windsor.
Islander issue 3 is now available to purchase from shop.lotus.com and is the next step in the story that we are telling with this magazine. For this issue, we have collected piercing and esoteric essays from the finest right-wing minds on the theme of our civilizational winter. Each of our authors is an expert in bringing forth the most important hidden revelations from the lowest reaches of the soul, and it has all been beautifully rendered in a medievalist revivalist aesthetic. For this issue, I commissioned a new translation of the ancient Anglo-Saxon poem, The Wanderer, and have written a companion essay exploring how it is a reflection of our modern experience. I personally feel that this is the most important thing I've ever written, so I will be looking forward to your feedback on it. We have resolved our distribution issues, with the magazines being printed in advance of the orders, so we can guarantee that you will receive your copy very soon after ordering it. And you will also receive email updates so you can see exactly where it is. Hopefully, issue 3 can provide you with the space and context to engage in deep reflection about the nature of our circumstances, to discover hidden truths about yourself and find the resolve to make it through our spiritual exile.